Hello, how are you? My name is Aisha, and today I would like to speak to you guys about the Red Summer of 1919. Um, if you don't know anything about the Red Summer, it was after the vets came back from World War One, and they were basically treated like shit after fighting for their country. Towns were burnt down, people's homes were burnt down. And I guess that's basically what you get as a Black American when you come back to your country or your captivity, right? So, um, I'm going to read some of this article to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will leave it in the description. And I'll give you some of my commentary as I go. This is going to be another frustrating video because you will see the hypocrisy. You will see how people tell you how you should protest and how you should march, but they would never do it that way. So I'll give you guys some information on this. When dozens of brutal race riots erupted across the U.S. in the wake of World War I and the Great Migration, Black veterans stepped up to defend their communities against white violence. So that's what they had to face when they came back from war. The ink had barely dried on the Treaty of Versailles, which formally ended World War I, when recently returned Black veterans grabbed their guns and stationed themselves on rooftops in Black neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., prepared to act as snipers in the case of mob violence in July of 1919. Others set up blockades around Howard University, a Black intellectual hub, creating a protective ring around residents. So not only did these Black men go to war to fight other people, they had to come back to their country and protect their lives and the lives of Black citizens for fear of what white people would do to them. This is what they got when they came back. This is why Muhammad Ali would not go to war with this country, would not go to war for this country. And then they tried to shame him because he said, I won't go to war for a country that won't fight for me. And this is what some of the whites got mad about. They didn't see the fact that he was standing up for him and his people. They saw, once again, they saw, why are you kneeling? That's what they saw. White sailors recently home from the war had been on a days-long drunken rampage, assaulting and in some cases lynching Black people on the Capitol streets. The relentlessness onslaught proved contagious, escalating in dozens of cities across the U.S. in what would become known as the Red Summer. The racist attacks in 1919 were widespread and often indiscriminate, but in many places they were initiated by white servicemen and centered upon the 380,000 Black veterans who had just returned from war. Because of their military service, Black veterans were seen as a particular threat to Jim Crow and racist subordination. Indeed, many African American soldiers returned from the war armed with a renewed determination to fight segregation and a near constant barrage of brutality. This is America. This is your country. The shit that you guys like to forget about. A postal official wrote at the time that as far back as the first movement of the American troops to France, the Negro publicists began to avail themselves of the argument that since the Negro was fit to wear the uniform he was, therefore fit for everything else. In Texas, a federal agent reported one of the principal elements causing concern is the returned Negro soldier who is not readily fitting back into his prior status of pre-war times. At the same time, cities across the North were being reshaped by the Great Migration. By the end of 1919, about 1 million African Americans had fled segregation and a total lack of economic opportunities in the South for northern cities. Between 1910 and 1920, the Black population in Chicago grew by 148%, and in Philadelphia by 500%, creating massive anxiety among white people in northern cities that Black people were taking jobs, housing, and security from them. Who's the latest group they say that to? Oh, the Mexicans. Everybody's the problem, except for the people that are actually creating the problem. Think about that. During the Red Summer, massive anxiety became mass violence. Between April and November of 1919, there would be approximately 25 riots and instances of mob violence, 97 recorded lynchings, and a 3-day-long massacre in Elaine, Arkansas, during which over 200 Black men, women, and children were killed after Black sharecroppers tried to organize for better working conditions. Wow. The Ku Klux Klan, which had been largely shut down by the government after the Civil War, yeah, right, experienced a resurgence in popularity and began carrying out dozens of lynchings across the South. If you guys hear anything banging around, the wind is blowing extremely strong, and so that is what you're hearing. So let me just show you this. This is very important for all the people that say we're not these people anymore. This is the, my God. These are people that are actually, they brought their children to see the shit that they caused. They're actually happy about this. They're happy about what the fuck they did. White children cheer outside an African American residence that they had set on fire in September 1919. So, quick little thought. When these bitches get their shit burned down, don't no longer feel sorry for them. Don't feel sorry, because most of these people, number one, have insurance. And number two, they used to do the same motherfucking shit to you. So why the fuck are we all of a sudden acting civilized? Oh, because it's 100 years later? Fuck out of here with that. These stories are so frustrating. And for you to even want to give America a chance at this point is your own stupidity. I'm telling you guys these stories because you need to know the world that you're living in. You need to know the country that you're living in and how it doesn't give a flying fuck about you. And yes, I'm using strong words, but do you realize these people are using strong gestures by burning your shit down and lynching you? Just a few years earlier, many young men had heeded Wilson's call to make the world safe for democracy and gone off to fight for America in one of history's bloodiest wars. So you see, these men are, first they heeded the call, They fought for their country, basically, even though their country never lifted a fucking finger for them while they were getting lynched, beat, slavery, all of that. But you want them to fight for you. This is how America does. Play basketball for us, but don't kneel. Don't you dare motherfucking kneel. There you have it, the mentality. Now they had come back to the country that recognized neither their service nor their humanity. Having just returned from battle, however, Black veterans were not inclined to take the abuse lying down. Across the country, former soldiers used their government-provided weapons training to defend their neighborhoods against vicious white mobs. So you want to talk about Black Lives Matter burning your shit down, but here all throughout history, you can see vicious white mobs bringing their kids with them to do fucked up shit on the regular. But we're all civilized because now we're in 2021. Now your shit's falling apart, and now you got to look at yourselves and see how fucked up you really were. I'm sorry for going off on this, but are you serious? This is what we deal with while people are telling us to calm down and just trust the justice system. And the United States is for all of us. And this is really just after I made a constitutional amendment video Fuck that. Black people formed ad hoc safe defense organizations to keep or to try to keep white folks from terrorizing their communities. See, this is what you deal with. Black veterans were a large part of what made the summer of 1919, in the words of historian David F. Krogler, the year the African Americans fought back. This is the country to which we soldiers of democracy return. This is the fatherland of which we fought. W.E.B. Du Bois, a civil rights activist and prominent intellectual, wrote in Crisis magazine in May 1919, a month after the earliest events of the Red Summer, a riot in Georgia where 6 people, 2 white officers and 4 black men, were killed at a church. But by the God of heaven, we are cowards and jackasses if now that the war is over, we do not marshal every ounce of our brain and brawn to fight a sterner, longer, more unbending battle against the forces of hell in our own land. Wow. Riots at the steps of the Capitol. Washington, D.C. had 5,000 black veterans, and for many of them, self-defense was a last resort after weeks and indeed decades of government inaction. One of the first people killed in Washington, D.C.'s violence was a 22-year-old black veteran named Randall Neal. At a high point of the mayhem, one Washington newspaper reported that the city had passed through its wildest and bloody night since Civil War times. Many of the city's white-owned newspapers fanned the flames of terror, reporting on fabricated instances of black men assaulting white women. Classic. The same thing that they always pull. And watch my other videos. Same thing. In one case, the Washington Post ran a front page story advertising the location for white servicemen to meet and carry out further attacks on black people in the city. Washington, D.C. had a vibrant black middle class that in many ways epitomized black people's slow but expanding economic and social advances. The city's black population was growing rapidly thanks to the Great Migration, and in 1919 they made up a quarter of the population. They also held many jobs in the federal government and at the country's first black-owned bank, the Industrial Savings Bank. It was a limited but steady march forward, one that many white people felt needed to be stopped. Jealous ass bitches. I knew it to be true, but it was almost an impossibility for me to realize as a truth that men and women of my race were being mobbed, chased, dragged from streetcars, beaten, and killed within the shadow of the dome of the Capitol, at the very front door of the White House. Oh, and guess what? Who recently stormed the Capitol? What mobs recently stormed a Capitol? Wow. History is really catching up with us. As the situation escalated, Wilson refused to act. He worried that the riots would damage the image he was cultivating of the United States as a global paragon of justice. He worried about himself, not the blacks that were getting killed. Himself. And how he was going to make America, or make the other countries outside of America, believe that we were just and righteous, which we never were. Now they know. I believe they always knew. They were just playing the game so they can get what they needed out of the situation. After 4 days of racist mob violence in Washington, D.C., an estimated 40 people were killed and dozens more were injured. The chaos was only quelled when 2,000 federal troops were deployed onto the city streets at the end of the month, just in time for the riots to spread to Chicago. So, I'm going to leave this article in the description so you guys can read it. The Red Summer spread across a few cities and states of basically mob violence. I will leave you with this before I end this video so we don't have to talk about these demons anymore. World War I was very much a broken promise for basically all African Americans. But the people who felt the brokenness of that promise most acutely were the veterans who had gone and risked their lives for their supposed war to make the world safe for democracy, and then came home to find that the country was still going to deny African Americans the privilege of democracy. I will end it there. Don't feel bad if you don't let anybody make you feel bad for not caring that shit gets burnt down. When people are marching for their lives and all these fuckers care about is fucking bricks and brawn, not brawn, but buildings and shit, but they can't give a second to care about human lives being lost, that's when shit should burn. Fuck it, all bets are off. You kill us and then you're worried about a building. All lives don't matter. Blue lives don't matter. Stop listening to that shit. Stop listening to these people when they tell you that you're being divisive. You're not being divisive. You're talking about your grievances in America, and fuck them if they don't like it. I'm sorry for all the profanity. I hope you guys could get through that and understand what was really going on, the topic at hand, versus you were cussing the whole time. I appreciate you listening. Have a good day. Bye.